This process video shows how I created these two journals from one Accordion file folder. I picked up this expandable file folder for 50 cents at the thrift shop. It measures 12 inches wide by 10 inches high, and I'm going to make two journals out of it. Here I'm marking the midway point of 6 inches in order to be able to draw a line to cut the folder in half. I separate the bottom of the folder using a utility knife. Next, I divide the internal dividers in half. Before cutting them in half, I realized it was probably going to be easier if I first separated the dividers from the side hinges. I later realized that it was going to be easier to first remove the bottom hinged or accordion section from the file before removing the individual dividers. In this case, there were 12 dividers in this folder, one for each month of the year. This is the bottom accordion piece removed. We won't be using it in this project, but I'm not going to throw it out because I can use it to make another spine in another journal. With the bottom accordion piece removed, I began separating each of the 12 internal dividers, cutting them in half. At this point, we have the foundation for our two separate journals. Here's the expandable folder cut in half, showing the bottom accordion piece that we won't be using sitting on top of the two halves. Here I'm just tidying up the top and bottom of the pages. You will see later in the video that I ended up separating or removing the pages from the hinges. I didn't remove the hinge, but I did remove the pages. They will be reattached at a later step. I use my finger to flatten the space between each page. It was at this point that I realized I needed to remove each of the pages. It'll become clearer as the video goes on, but here you can see I'm removing the pages from the accordion hinges of the file folder. Here we are with all the pages removed. Here I'm creating tabs onto which the removed pages will be reattached. This is a matter of creating peaks and valleys by pulling two of the accordion hinges, if you will, together. These will later be glued together to form a peak. And then in between each peak, there will be approximately a 1/2 inch to 3/8 inch valley. In order to keep these tabs in place and for me to figure out just how many peaks and valleys and tabs there are, I'm just using some paper clips. And you will see that I stopped relying on that method to use the paper clips. I think they just kept falling off. But you get the idea. You have to determine that you're going to need a peak to form a tab, and then about a 3/8 inch to 1/2 inch space between these tabs. That's going to be dictated by the file folder itself. It's not something that you're folding. The spacing of the file folder will determine how big your gap is in between each peak/tab. Here you see each of my tabs/peaks being formed. I'm back to using paper clips. Sometimes you'll have to bend the fold in the opposite direction. Sometimes you need a peak, but the fold is a valley. So you'll have to just work with the folder to make it pliable. Sorry, but I've removed the paper clips once again. You'll see I'm going to be using a bone folder to really work in those tabs to make sure they operate back and forth very easily. This will take some creasing with the bone folder. This really isn't as hard as it might look. I'm just recording this as I'm doing it. I've never done this hack before. Because these are not yet glued, you'll notice that I've used a pencil, a white pencil, to mark where my gaps/valleys are. It gets confusing when it's not yet glued, so this is a step that I highly recommend. I've resorted to mini clips instead of paper clips. Here's a view of the back of the spine before anything's been glued together. The gluing is done on the back of the spine. Be sure to use a good glue. Here I'm using art glitter glue just because it dries fast. An Elmer's glue or any kind of white glue would also work. It just doesn't glue as fast as art glitter glue. You'll need to temporarily remove the mini clip on the hinge that you are now applying glue to. So here you can see this is the first hinge I'm working on, or first tab, and I've temporarily removed the clips so that I could put glue on the opposite side of the spine in between the valley. And now that the glue is there, I'm making sure I put multiple clamps to keep those two valleys glued together, so that hinge/tab can thoroughly dry. Now I'm applying glue for the second hinge/tab. Again, this is on the back though of the spine. Here's the back of the spine after all the hinges tabs have been created. Should be nice and flat. Here I'm reattaching the pages to my tabs. You'll have to give some thought whether or not you want to just have these remain single thickness or create a pocket by gluing 2 pages to a hinge instead of just one. If your file folder came with tabs, like mine did, you can either choose to keep them or remove them. Here I'm removing them. In other cases, I've kept them. At this stage, you can also create page fold-outs instead of just a single page or a pocket. You can glue 2 of the pages together and create a page that will fold out. Once your pages are dry, it's time to reinforce the spine with a piece of chipboard. The chipboard can be from an old book cover. Measure the width of the spine and cut a corresponding piece. Using a good glue, attach the chipboard to the existing spine. If you prefer a more flexible spine, use a piece of fabric instead of chipboard to reinforce the folder. Regardless of using chipboard or fabric, I recommend adding some weight and letting the glue dry overnight. It's now the next morning. I've removed the weights and the journal's ready to embellish with any theme or ephemera that I choose. I hope I haven't made this process video too confusing and that you're able to follow along if you would like to try this technique. Oh, P.S. If you do run out of pages because you've doubled them up to make pockets or whatever, you can just use any kind of index paper or scrapbook paper that has some weight to it to create your own pages rather than having to use those that were from the file folder. Thanks for watching.